Hello, I'm Shazza and welcome to my channel Hooked on Books. Today I'm going to be chatting about Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin, which is translated from the Argentinian, and I have reread this recently as part of the Booktube Rereadathon that's going on this year. If you're interested in that rereadathon, I'll put all the info down below. Okay, so on my second reading of this, I'm probably just as confused as I was the first time, but by no means is that a criticism. It's actually something that I really enjoy in a book. I don't necessarily feel the need to kind of get everything, because I like that experience of being left wondering and trying to work it out, and it makes me want to talk about it more. It makes me want to find people that have read it and discuss it. So yeah, that's a compliment more than anything. I probably picked up on a little bit more than on the second reading, but not huge amounts. But I kind of, yeah, like I said, I do like that. So this Slim Nightmare is probably one of the most bizarre little books I have ever read. The whole book is this conversation between this character Amanda, who is very unwell and seemingly probably going to die, and at her bedside is this character David, who's very enigmatic, and at no point do we really know exactly who he is or what his deal is, and he is questioning her and getting her to retell recent traumatic events. And the book's title is just so apt, Fever Dream, because my whole experience of reading it, the whole thing just felt like a fever dream. It's disorientating, it's claustrophobic, it makes no sense, it's nightmarish. It's kind of like waking up from your own nightmare or your own dream and you're trying to work out what's going on. At no point is there any explanation of what this book is or what's happened in it. Even to begin with, it just dives straight into it. There's no sort of lead up, there's no sort of introduction, it just happens. Everything is just happening, and that works really well because, I mean, at first it might take you a couple of pages to kind of work out what exactly you're reading, but once you get into that flow, you're just determined to figure out what's going on. And David, he is like asking these questions with such urgency that you almost feel that urgency with him, because as he's questioning Amanda and leading her through the story, you want to know what's going on too. And at some points Amanda goes off and starts telling aspects of the story and he's saying, oh, that's not important. And he's trying to get her to go in the direction of locating this important moment. And he wants her to find that important moment and talk about it, and not only to sort of identify it, but to understand that important moment as well. And we're just as obsessed as he is with figuring out what's going on and what's happened. It's hard to even say what the story even is. Even on my second reading, I still don't even really know what to say it is. And I think even if I tried, it's one of those things that it could easily spoil it. I mean, there's a definite theme of motherhood in it. At one point I did sort of think that the whole book might just be a metaphor in relation to that. And then I had also, sort of side note, I had recently watched an episode of Black Mirror. I think it was the second episode of the recent season, and in that episode there's a focus on parental protection being pushed to the extreme and how that ends up being really damaging, and that's something that I had in the back of my mind, and it's definitely something that exists in here too. It's essentially about this woman and child who go off to this kind of isolated rural area, and it does feel very isolated, and that makes a kind of eerie sort of setting, and it's definitely very female focused in terms of characters, and like I said, there was that theme of motherhood that exists throughout it. It's this literary psychological thriller that will leave you wondering for days, years after, and even if you read it a second time you still won't get it, but you'll still think it's brilliant. I do really like this one. I like books that are open-ended, I like books that don't feel the need to tie everything up in a little bow, I like books that have an unreliable narrator, and yeah, it's just this psychological literary thriller that just, bloody brilliant is my ultimate summary of this. In terms of looking at the rereading aspect of it, I definitely picked up on a little bit more. Like I said, not a huge amount. And I definitely fell in love with it more. There's definitely a fear of if you reread something, you might end up being more critical of it and not love it as much, but I definitely didn't have that experience. At first though, I didn't think that I was going to like it as much. I was reading the first few pages and I was like, oh, I don't know if I like this. And I was kind of scared because I'd talked quite highly about it, but once I kind of got into the flow of it again, I was like, I fell in love with it all over again, and I definitely love it much more at my second reading, and I definitely picked up a little bit more in the motherhood theme this time round, but I do think that this is one that I need to read again. My experience of reading it both times is very similar in that I read it in one sitting, and once I'd finished it, I literally just wanted to go back and reread it straight away, and I kind of wish that I had done that. Maybe I'll do that next year. Maybe I'll just read this every year, but at one point in my life I need to reread it twice in one sitting, because I think I might get it if I do that. But it is quite interesting to see that my experience is very similar to what it was the first time, but apart from the fact that I picked up on a little bit more. Anyway, yes, I do really recommend this one if it's something that you're into. I personally love it, and it's definitely one of my favourite books of all time. That's all I have to say about that one. The other prompt for the Booktube Rereadathon this month was to reread a book that's part of a series, so I'll be doing a separate video on that, and that'll probably be coming quite soon, so I'll let you know my thoughts on that as well. Anyway, thanks for watching guys, and I will see you again soon. Bye. We're just as, and we are just as